I first read about the elevator ritual from some guy on Reddit. I don't know if he really experienced what he said he did or just made up the whole story, but it made me interested in the subject. I saw a bunch of YouTube videos of people playing it without any success. I wanted to try it out myself. I live in an apartment in a 14-story building since a couple months back. Yesterday, I didn't have anyone to hang out with, so I decided that I should try this out to see if it really works. I entered the elevator on the first floor, like the instructions said. I pressed the button for the 4th floor and felt entirely convinced that nothing strange or out of the ordinary would happen. A couple seconds went by. I was on the 4th floor and pressed the button for the 2nd floor. At this point, I suddenly felt a lot more creeped out. It was almost as if something was warning me to not proceed. And thinking back now, after everything that has happened, I wouldn't be surprised if it was. I pressed the buttons in the order that the instructions said. Right before I pressed the button for the 5th floor, where the woman was supposed to get on, I swear I heard a woman laughing in a creepy way somewhere outside the elevator. It could have been just an ordinary person, and my brain making it sound a lot scarier, but that was what I heard. I pressed the button for the 5th floor and waited nervously for what felt like half a minute. I know that I shouldn't even have looked out the door at that point, but I did, and I was shocked. In front of me was this famous, deceased Hollywood actress that I had a crush on since I was a teenager. She just looked at me with a warm smile and entered the elevator without taking her eyes off me. She was wearing a vintage-looking dark blue skirt suit and white gloves. Her long brown hair was tied neatly in a bun, and her long, slim legs looked just as good as in the movies. Her face looked just as pretty as ever, and she had the same appearance as she did in the late 1950s and early 1960s, I think. I even thought about saying something before I looked in the mirror behind her. Her clothes were molding, and her legs and neck had a greenish-looking tone with scars covering them. A little handbag she was carrying looked tattered, as if it hadn't been used for decades. I turned away and pressed the button for the 1st floor. Just as the instructions said, the elevator started ascending to the 10th floor instead of going down to the first one. She asked me where I was going, and I tried ignoring her. The doors opened at the 10th floor, and I exited the elevator without turning back. The first thing I noticed was that this hallway was a lot darker than the other ones. I looked out the window and noticed that it was nighttime. When I entered the elevator a couple minutes before that, it was 3 p.m. and completely light outside. I saw a small red cross on top of one of the buildings, just as the instructions said. I didn't see any people or any lights. Everything was covered in some kind of mist, and I couldn't see my legs or feet because of it. Thinking that this was enough and that I should go back, I turned around and noticed that the doors to the elevator were still open and the lights were on. I heard a faint giggle coming from over there. For a moment, I thought I had no escape, but I decided to get on the elevator from the other floor. I hurried up the stairs in complete darkness, whilst having a terrible feeling of someone or something chasing me from behind. I tripped over the stairs when I reached the 11th floor and probably hit my head on the wall. I think I passed out, but the thing is, I woke up on the bed in my apartment. Everything seemed normal. I looked out the window and the sun was shining. People were walking down the street and someone talking in the apartment next to mine. I knew that I hadn't dreamt the whole thing and that I didn't even end the ritual. I was too exhausted and creeped out to do anything though, so I decided to take a nap and skip the morning lecture. Never in my 20 years of life had I experienced anything like that before. I woke up 2 hours later when my friend texted me, "Where are you?" I told him that I overslept and that I'm on my way. I took a shower and thought about having breakfast, but I wasn't hungry. I left my apartment and immediately noticed an out of service sign hanging on the elevator. That wasn't the only thing that was out of the ordinary. Every person, and I mean every single one passing by me, smiled at me. At first I thought they were unusually nice and polite, but I was soon under the impression that something was very wrong. I got a message from my friend, which simply was the following smiley. I hurried back to my apartment, locked a door, and wrote all of this. I don't know if anyone is reading this, but if you do,